Hey, listen, people and peopleettes. So when the Switch 2 came out, we of course got the releases of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the Switch 2 editions. Along with those releases, on the Nintendo app came a little subsection on the app called Zelda Notes. Now, of course, the Zelda Notes has several different cool features, and I'll probably dive a little bit more in those myself personally, but I wanted to talk on YouTube and to you guys about one very specifically, and that was the voice memories. The voice memories was by far the one I was most interested in. The others are just kind of cool little add-ons that I might tinker with later, but I really wanted to dive into those and see what kind of lore, what kind of stories, what kind of things we got from that. And I might be able to make, after playing through Breath of the Wilds, a couple different videos about these memories. But today I wanted to specifically talk about the best 18 in Breath of the Wild. Now, of course, the best is subjective, but these are, in my opinion, the best ones, the most interesting ones, and I had the most fun with these 18. So, let's dive into them.
Camouflaged as rock, divine beast Vah Rudania was concealed in Death Mountain. Then the flow of lava shifted, and Rudania appeared. It could be mere coincidence, but no. Perhaps it has awoken on behalf of all of us, sensing the return of the calamity.
So we know that the Kingdom of Hyrule started working with the Sheikah and others in the Kingdom of Hyrule to uncover the ancient Sheikah tech that had been hidden long ago in hopes of fighting the calamity. However, while they did unearth some of the Guardians and some of the Divine Beasts, it seems that Vah Rudania actually awakened itself and just appeared. And to be honest, that probably is a really good thing. It is a big challenge for Hylians and other races outside of the Gorons to be in these areas, much less work in these conditions. Exploring and excavating inside the volcano may have proven near impossible. I mean, how does that work? You know, like you got to take like a water break, but you got to go take a fire elixir, and do you get dehydrated faster even though you can withstand the heat? I don't know how all that works, but working in these areas probably wouldn't have been great for any other race than the Gorons. But this does bring up the question, what is the role of a pilot of a divine beast, since this one appeared on its own? Are they somewhat sentient? Perhaps they can activate upon feeling the calamity's like hovering presence, but can only do like isolated movements without a pilot, almost like a kind of standby mode. But either way, it's amazing that this divine beast appeared on its own without anyone actually having to excavate it or find it. But it does bring up a few questions for me.
Once upon a time, Dueling Peaks was one mountain. There are a few prevailing theories about its unusual split. Some posit the split was a path carved by a dragon, while others say it was caused by a great tremor beneath the surface. Personally, I believe it to be a scar on the mountain caused by the battle against the calamity 10,000 years ago. Of course, there is no way to confirm my theory at this point.
One of the most recognizable parts of the landscape in Hyrule is the Dueling Peaks. You can see its strange appearance from the plateau in the very beginning of the game whenever you walk right out of the Shrine of Resurrection. If you follow the path that Breath of the Wild kind of sets in the story, it's one of the first locations that you reach as well. Now, looking at these mountains, it's no surprise that they were one whole mountain. It literally looks like one mountain that was just cut in half. But how did it split? Was it a natural cause, or did a dragon or the calamity cause it long ago? To me, the break seems a little bit more natural. It doesn't seem like Heber Mountain's blast that went through the mountain, because that blast is a lot more precise, very like smooth and accurate, and this is a little bit more rugged in the Dueling Peaks. However, just because a quote-unquote natural thing happened to it doesn't mean that it wasn't caused by something unnatural. We know from Tears of the Kingdom that the Demon King can cause some crazy changes to the landscape. I mean, there's a floating castle in the sky, and who knows, maybe the calamity somehow caused an earthquake to happen kind of underground or something and caused the Dueling Peaks to split.
The North Gerudo ruins are the largest in all of the desert. Based on the sizable quarry and numerous ruins scattered about Gerudo Highlands, it appears that Gerudo Town was once quite large. I've heard that this area of the town was destroyed by a rampaging Molduga employed by a tyrant, but it is merely a theory.
So it seems like Gerudo Town in the past took up a much larger space than it does now in the present. This winter with Age of Imprisoment's release, we may actually get to see more of these areas, so maybe we could actually see this area and how big it was and how big really all the areas were. But this tyrant that this memory speaks of that destroyed this area may have been Ganondorf the Evil King himself. It says he employed a Molduga to do so, and we've seen Ganondorf do these kinds of things before. I mean, other than when he's the Demon King and he's just able to instantaneously create monsters from his pure hatred, it seems like, and his malice, we've seen him do this before. In the Gerudo Canyon, whenever he's kind of on one side of the cliffs and Rauru and Zelda and Sonya are on the other, they blow a little like flute thing and Moldugas show up, and of course Rauru ends it really quickly. But personally, I believe that Ganondorf was the one that did this to the Gerudo town. We know that there was an internal feud within the Gerudo people because some of them opposed him, such as the Sage of Lightning, and perhaps they wouldn't give in to their king, so he just sent a Molduga after him. He's the kind of guy who just gets rid of anything that gets in his way. And personally, that's who I believe did it.
There are only 2 cherry blossom trees in Hyrule. They have been referred to as the Father Tree and Mother Tree. I imagine this is because the cherry blossom trees are sometimes worshipped for their supposed ability to purge evil spirits. Satori, who is said to live on this mountain, may be a protector of Mother Tree, sent by Father Tree.
So there are only 2 cherry blossom trees in all of Hyrule. This one being the Mother Tree and the other being the Father Tree. And the only other cherry blossom tree in all of Hyrule is the Great Deku Tree. And since he's kind of the father of the forest, Father Tree makes sense. This description that they give for the Father and Mother Tree also sounds a lot like a description that would be given for the Great Deku Tree, a tree who is worshipped for being able to purge evil spirits. The grove where the Great Deku Tree resides is not only a very spiritual place in and of itself, but also houses the sword that seals the darkness. In Tears of the Kingdom, we can see that when Phantom Ganon takes up residence inside the Great Deku Tree, that not only is the Great Deku Tree unwell, but the Koroks, the children of the forest, they won't speak to you, and they seem unwell or sick themselves. The well-being of the Great Deku Tree seems to affect all the forest in Hyrule. When he is well, he's able to protect and purge any evil spirits. Perhaps that's why the Hyrule Forest surrounds him, so it's not so easy for anyone just to get to him. Perhaps he made Satori or knew a spirit named Satori and asked them to watch over the Mother Tree. But I wonder why. Maybe it's just because it's another cherry blossom tree and it has a little bit more importance and so it needs protection. Or could this eventually become another Deku Tree? I really don't know.
Father decided that the stables would be places of refuge in preparation for the calamity. In his words, there is more to protecting our people than simply fighting. The Stable Association was thus established to further strengthen cooperation, and Mestro, proprietor of Wetland Stable, was appointed as its first chairman.
It seems like the King of Hyrule's eldest father did everything he could, pulled out every stop he could to fight the calamity, including creating places of refuge for all of the residents of Hyrule. And so, the Stable Association was born. And though through the voice memories that you see in Breath of the Wild, it's pretty apparent that stables that exist in places, I wonder if many of the stables that existed in Breath of the Wild's time would have even existed had he not made this association. And though the impending threat of the calamity probably is a little bit more gone in the time of Breath of the Wild, and it's just kind of a present post-apocalyptic world, I still think that they achieve what they're supposed to do and create places of refuge for people as they're traveling and going about from location to location.
I understand that the gates of Hyrule Castle are being built in preparation for the calamity. At the moment, Sheikah researchers and skilled Goron blacksmiths are working together and have gathered within the castle walls. It's clear to me that Father is taking the threat of the calamity seriously.
Now, kind of like we mentioned in the last memory, the king really did try to prepare for the calamity. He really went out of his way and had the castle fortified in preparation to fight Ganon. They used every resource they could in building the best gates to keep the calamity out. They had the Sheikah, arguably the best minds in all of the kingdom, and the Gorons, the strongest and possibly best blacksmiths in the kingdom, to help construct some amazing gates that could hold off incredible danger. Of course, with the calamity being directly under the castle, it didn't really matter how strong they were because, calamity was already inside. Now, another little thing that I wanted to add to this was from Voice Memory 4. Here it is.
The purpose of a gatehouse such as this is to allow enemy soldiers in, only to seal the entrance shut, cutting them off from their forces before wiping them out entirely. Over its long history, the first gatehouse has never been breached.
Now, though this wasn't made in preparation for the calamity, it doesn't seem, and these gatehouses already existed, they seem to kind of have the same outcome. Before they were used by Hyrule to separate their enemies from each other, and so they couldn't help and take them out a little bit more isolated and keep them from moving a little farther into the castle. But I'm sure with Calamity Ganon being on the inside from the get-go, he was able to use them to trap Hylians and people inside and just basically massacre and wipe out everything.
The buds are swelling and look as if they might bloom at any moment. These flowers submerged beneath the surface of the water have been considered prophetic since ancient times. Their blooming is said to herald natural disasters. Perhaps they sense the evil spirit of the calamity.
Now, though these flowers are very interesting being underwater and are very beautiful, it seems that them blooming is a bad omen. And I wonder if things such as the buds of these flowers were used in prophesying the great calamity coming. You know, certain stories sometimes use the stars to tell the future or whatever it may be. I wonder if these flowers are able to predict the coming of the calamity. Or could they have been used in addition to the prophecy? Perhaps there was a prophecy and people doubted, but these flowers and other things throughout the kingdom that were showing signs of a calamity coming maybe persuaded some doubters.
From here, you can see the Great Plateau, or rather, Hyrule itself. At the castle, we are king and princess, but while here, we were father and daughter. It was in this place that I learned about everything from paragliders to cooking. I still remember the feeling of the warm doublet father wrapped around my shoulders.
Honestly, when I booted this game up on my Switch 2, one of the first places I wanted to go was this location, as it is the burial site of the king. The fact that he and Zelda spent time here and this was a special place for them makes this location even more special to me. She learned how to cook here and she spoke of wearing a doublet that he gave her here. Very similar to how many of us probably learned how to cook our first dish from the king's spirit and received a doublet from him. Perhaps it's the same doublet that he gave her as a child to keep her warm. And I wonder if she was able to bury him here before she had to go to the castle and hold off Ganon, or if someone else just knew of the importance of this area to the king. Either way, this has always just been one of my favorite areas of the plateau especially, but now after seeing this memory, it's by far one of my favorite areas in the whole game.
Past this gate is a snowy landscape, cold enough for one to freeze there. The area is a place where heroes can test their skills, but the landscape is clearly not a natural phenomenon. Perhaps some ancient technology we have yet to learn about is being used here.
Now, the Great Plateau is, in my opinion, one of the best tutorials in any game that I've ever played. It does so much to prepare you for the journey ahead and lets you experience so many of the things that you're going to experience throughout this game, including having to deal with surviving in extreme temperatures. I always felt like this frozen area was a little out of place because you're in between grassy areas like Central Hyrule and Lake Hylia, and to the west is the beginning of Gerudo territory where temperatures kind of skyrocket, plus the rest of the plateau isn't like this, and actually this frozen area is on the side of the plateau closest to the desert, so you would think if anything it wouldn't be here that it would be frozen, but now seeing this memory and knowing that it absolutely is not natural, it's one of the coolest finds in the memories to me. I suppose we truly don't understand or know the scope of what the Sheikah technology, or really any technology, I guess, in Hyrule could have been. Perhaps it's something farther than Sheikah technology, and maybe it's some of the Zonai's work.
This depiction of Mipha is truly exquisite, though that is hardly surprising. Zora's domain is home to talented metalworking artisans after all. It is said that this statue is made not only to honor her elevation as a champion, but also to act as a beacon for her safety, in the hopes that she will return home. She was embarrassed by it, however, and has asked King Dorephan to move it somewhere less prominent once she completes her duty.
Now, of course, this statue probably looks very familiar to everyone. This is the same one that brings back Link's memories of Mipha. And the fact that it still sits here when we start Breath of the Wild shows just how much the king and the Zora revere the Zora princess. However, my favorite part about this voice memory is knowing that the reason that it was moved in Tears of the Kingdom is out of respect that the king showed for his daughter's wishes. She had completed her task, so he relocated it to a different location. I mean, he easily, since she was deceased, could have left it as a memorial for her, but no, he went on and moved it, and it still is a memorial, but he moved it as she asked, out of town and out of the central part of Zora's domain.
Among other things, the Gerudo are known for their craft in jewelry. They consider the gems used in their jewelry as talismans, absorbing both sunlight and moonlight, which cleanses evil. As such, they wear the jewelry as much as possible. Even Urbosa's shield and knife have been crafted by a jeweler rather than a blacksmith.
Now, I suppose that this was obvious knowledge, since it was a jeweler who recreated Urbosa's weapons in Breath of the Wild for Link if they ever broke or shattered. But I really never thought about it, to be honest. And it's got me kind of wondering, are other blacksmiths in the community, are they slacking? Are these jewelers just really skilled with making weapons as well? Honestly, her sword and shield are two of my favorite weapons in the entire game, and the fact that they weren't even made by blacksmiths, that's honestly kind of a weird revelation for me.
Rivali brought me to Garflam's secret hot spring, telling me I was overworking myself. Since he can only carry one person, he said he would act as my guard, so Link is waiting at the village. I cannot remember the last time I relaxed on my own like this.
So the most interesting part to me about this is that Link left her with Rivali. I wonder if Link fought him on this, or if they snuck away. The way she talks is it doesn't sound like they snuck away, but it's just a very interesting situation for me. Rivali is definitely a capable champion, and with the ability to fly, he could probably get Zelda away from most danger very quickly, but Link took his role as her appointed knight very seriously. But perhaps this speaks for Link's trust in Rivali, despite Rivali's disapproval of Link. He may be arrogant, but he is very capable, and Link may be able to see that. Or perhaps whenever Zelda goes somewhere, as long as she has any of the champions with her, she's safe. Because we do see her with Urbosa whenever Link shows up in one of the memories, but I'm pretty sure she ran away at that point.
We received a request from Daruk to move this stable, but it's a critical hub, offering refuge to travelers entering Death Mountain. It also houses the many rescue dogs here on standby in case something happens. With all that in mind, I don't see why he'd want to move it. I shall need to ask him for more information.
Now, this one was possibly the most humorous memory to me, and I loved it and wanted to include it for that reason, because it's obviously a callback to Daruk being absolutely terrified of dogs. He doesn't want them anywhere around him. In Breath of the Wild, we see him terrified of a small dog after he fearlessly takes out a band of enemies. After which he even asks Zelda if Ganon is a dog-like monster with fear quaking in his voice. And I love that he wanted the stable removed just so he didn't have to be near dogs when he walks through the area.
This is the spring where Din, goddess of power, is worshipped. Once she was one of the three goddesses, alongside courage and wisdom, but it is said that faith in her dimmed due to power being seen as a symbol of the Demon King. The terrain around the spring is complex and covered with roughly chopped trees, suggesting this place was once used as a training site of some kind.
I find this voice memory to be absolutely amazing. I think it's the most lore-packed memory in the 125, in my personal opinion. Not only is this a mention of the three golden goddesses in Breath of the Wild, but it proves that many people in Hyrule quit worshipping the goddess of power just because of her association with Ganon. This has been something that had been speculated because of how in the Faron region, you've got the owls, dragons, and boars, but the owls and dragons seem to be left untouched. However, the boars, many have been broken and fallen down, and actually there's a voice memory about that I'm going to share right here.
There was a time when boars were worshipped as symbols of power. However, I remember reading in literature that the Demon King took the form of a boar and that, upon learning this, people came to regard them as evil. I checked around this entire area, and all the stone boar statues show considerable damage.
So there you have it. It seems that Din is the least revered in all of the kingdom at this time, and anything that represents Ganon or power or Din seems to be either beaten, broken, or just completely neglected at this point.
This place was originally used as a watchtower, but I've repurposed it into my own study. It's perfect for conducting my studies away from Father's prying eyes. At the moment, I'm learning about ancient relics, as well as the preservation of endangered species. Books from all around Hyrule live here in this library. As such, it is a critical place for conducting research, but Father has forbidden entry. Guards are on constant watch just outside the entrance. So, for now, it's best to enter using the hidden passage from the docks.
Now, of course, in Breath of the Wild, we see that the king not only wanted Zelda to focus on awakening her powers, but also to stop playing the scholar, as he says. However, Zelda found ways to keep studying regardless. She felt it was one way that she could help while she was waiting on her powers to awaken because she felt so helpless during that time. And at the time, she was even wondering if they would awaken. So she took a whole watchtower as a study room. And the thing about that is maybe I could see that the king thought that in the tower there she was devoting her time to prayer and being in there trying to unlock her power. But how did he not think about someone being a guard at the entrances of the secret parts of the library? I mean, she's the daughter of the king. She knows all of these tunnels and things. I just found that part very interesting.
Cape Cressia is commonly referred to as Demon King's Claw, but nobody seems to know the origin of that name. Areas where evil spirits gather occasionally experience unique topographical shifts. I find myself wondering if this is such a place.
Now, one of the interesting things about this cape here to me is that in Tears of the Kingdom, this is one of the locations where you find one of the Dragon Tear memories. And it's in that specific memory that Ganondorf not only takes the Secret Stone, but the life of Sonia. It's in this memory that he makes his move to become the Demon King. Now, I don't believe that this is where Sonia and Zelda were because the next memory is up in the Hebra Mountains, and I assume that they're a little bit closer to the Great Plateau somewhere because that's where the castle was at the time. However, it is where the tear landed once Zelda shed all the tears as the Light Dragon. And I wonder if since it was such a tragic and evil memory, if once it landed here, it caused a topographical shift like Zelda spoke of. Because it makes it even more interesting that this place is in the shape of a dagger, which is what was used to take Sonia's life.
The Kochi dye shop is considered without peer all across Hyrule. The owner, too, is without peer. I brought 5 garments here to have them dyed using the shop's special technique, and a unique royal blue color was achieved by taking extracts from a silent princess. I wonder if everyone will appreciate them.
Now, obviously, the Kochi dye shop is still in use today, and honestly, there's several places that 100 years later are still being used, the same as they were before the Calamity. But my favorite part about this memory is learning that all of the champions' garbs were created using the Silent Princess. That's how they got their color. I think this is very fitting for several reasons. The Silent Princess really represents Zelda, and as their leader, all of the champions wearing this royal blue into battle and to fight the Calamity, I think is just really cool and really fitting and a nice little touch that they added.
I convinced a fisher from Lurelin village to take me to Eventide Island by boat. I've heard this island served as a final training ground for monks. I wonder what kind of rigorous trial awaited them here. Now, however, the island is overrun by monsters. I had no choice but to abandon going ashore.
So when you reach Eventide Island in Breath of the Wild, it also serves as a training ground for Link. Possibly one of the most memorable trials in the whole game. When you set foot on the island, you're stripped of everything down to your underwear. You have to fight monsters with just what you can find on the island and place 3 orbs in their respective pedestals to unlock a shrine before you can go get anything back. And also in this trial, if you die, you have to start all over, making it one of the more challenging and memorable trials in Breath of the Wild. I wonder if the monks had a very similar test. Zelda said that it was a final training ground for them. Perhaps it was actually the training ground for them to become an actually recognized Sheikah monk. They were some of the most intelligent people in all of Hyrule, so maybe starting them off here with nothing but the clothes on their back, or even taking those away, I suppose, down to their underwear, was a way to recognize their intelligence and recognize their training as Sheikah monks. Now, those are all the memories that I'm going to talk about for this video. They were the most interesting ones that I found throughout all of Breath of the Wild, and honestly, it took me a while to break them down because I really liked a lot of them, but I loved these memories, and I love what they really brought to this story. But I'm also going to do one for Tears of the Kingdom. Hopefully, I can get it out really, really fast. I'd love to, and I'd love to get it out there. But if you like this, please subscribe, hit the like button. It helps out the channel greatly. That way you can see the Tears of the Kingdom stuff and all the other Zelda stuff and Nintendo stuff I do here. Appreciate you guys, and I will see you on the next one. Later, taters.